Let me tell you the story of one of the most extraordinary women in African history. She is the third woman to marry Nelson Mandela and the only woman in modern history to become First Lady of two different African countries. Her name is Graca Machel, who married Nelson Mandela in 1998 at the age of 80 after he officially divorced Winnie Mandela. I will talk about her humble beginning, her struggle as a rebel fighter, her meeting and marriage to Graca Machel, the extraordinary rebel leader of Frelimo and the first president of independent Mozambique, the tragic death of the husband, and her inspiring love story with Nelson Mandela at the twilight of his life. Welcome to this edition of Hispel Media. My name is Gabriel Adidia. If you enjoy this episode, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Else, let me know in the comment section. Without much ado, let's get to it. Graca Simbin was born into a Methodist family on 17th of October 1945 in rural Nkadin, Gaza province in what was then Portuguese Mozambique. Her father died 3 weeks, precisely 20 days before she was born. Graca was the youngest of 6 children. But before the demise of her father, he left a dying wish that his daughter should be educated. Then, her mother and older siblings took up that responsibility. They ensured that Graca had access to the best schools available for black kids at the time. The family were peasants and life was hard in the colonial setting. But even in those early years, Graca showed seriousness of mind. She was sent to Methodist mission schools where she excelled and later won a scholarship to high school in Maputo, then Lourenço Marques. In that school, she was often the only black African in her class. These experiences shaped her sense of injustice and her education as an African radical began. She later recalled asking herself, "Why is it that I'm made to feel strange in my own country? They are the foreigners here, not me. Something is wrong here." Notwithstanding, Graca continued to excel in her education and gain further opportunities, this time a scholarship to study in Lisbon, in Portugal. There, she studied languages, including German, and became more politically aware, connecting with other Lusophone students and getting involved in the independence movement. After some time in Europe, under pressure, including surveillance by the Portuguese secret police, she returned to Africa and eventually joined Frelimo, the Front for the Liberation of Mozambique, and received military training in their controlled guerrilla camps in Tanzania. By 1973, she was active in Frelimo in Tanzania, teaching, organizing and working in its education wing. She was also trained as a guerrilla fighter and met the charismatic leader of Frelimo, Graca Machel. This would mark the beginning of an inspiring love story. In the years leading up to Mozambique's independence in 1975, Graca Simbin's path intersected with Graca Machel, one of the key commanders and leaders in Frelimo. Amidst the struggle for liberation, their relationship flourished. After independence on the 25th of June 1975, Graca became the first president of Mozambique and Graca was appointed the first Minister of Education and Culture. Soon after, on September 7, 1975, she and Graca Machel got married. She became the First Lady of Mozambique and also retained her position as a minister. Their union was later blessed with 2 children, Josina, their first daughter who was born in April 1976, and Malengenin, their son, who was born in December 1978. Under their leadership, Mozambique embarked on an ambitious project of education reform. From very low enrollment under colonial rule, the new government under Graca's education ministry pushed school enrollment figures very high. Males' primary school attendance rose to over 90%, while females rose to about 75% in some years. Interestingly, their marriage was both political and personal. Graca was more than a symbolic spouse. Politically, therefore, she was deeply involved in nation building, especially in education and culture. Samora's political style was radical and charismatic, but Graca brought discipline, an international perspective, and moral weight. At some times, she was the moderating presence in what was a difficult and often dangerous project of post-colonial governors. But any euphoria she might have had was soon dashed by new crises. A CIA-backed counter-revolutionary movement, Renamo, plunged the new nation into civil war, causing chaos and wrecking the economy. However, just as peace was being re-established, Graca Machel was killed in a mysterious plane crash. On the night of the 19th of October 1986, the plane carrying President Graca Machel crashed near the Mozambique-South African border, killing Machel and several of his comrades. President Graca Machel, who had attended a summit in Zambia, was returning to Mozambique against the advice of the Zambian authorities, who wanted him to wait till the next day. The circumstances surrounding the plane crash were suspicious, and speculations continued to link the crash to sabotage by foreign intelligence, including the apartheid regime in South Africa. However, nothing definitively has been proven. As a consequence, Graca Machel became a widow. She had lost not just a husband, but a partner in the struggle and a co-architect of the nation. At that time, Graca was a young woman with 2 children, and the nation she helped to build was at war and with an uncertain future. Meanwhile, in her grief and mourning period, she received a letter of support from political prisoner Nelson Mandela and his wife, Winnie Mandela. At that time, Mandela was still in prison. In her response to Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela's letter, she wrote, "From within your vast prison, you brought a ray of light in my hour of darkness." After years of mourning and public service, Graca Machel dedicated her life to children's rights, education, conflict, and the rehabilitation of thousands displaced by war. She vowed never to remarry again in her life. But about 12 years later, that would change as Nelson Mandela came into the picture. When Nelson Mandela was released from prison in 1990 after 27 years of incarceration, he emerged into a changed world, yet burdened by personal losses, estrangement, and political infections of expectations. His marriage to Winnie Mandela was fractured by long separation, infidelity, and the fallout of the apartheid struggle. Graca Machel, who is decades younger, also suffered losses, particularly the loss of a husband. Meanwhile, Madiba met Graca in Mozambique soon after his release in 1990 and was impressed by her. He recalled her as a very impressive woman and striking personality. Their next major public encounter was in 1992 when she received an honorary doctorate in Cape Town. It was a moment of public recognition, but also of private recognition. Over time, they began to correspond, meet, travel, and share ideas. From there, a strong relationship developed. While Mandela showed his advances, Graca was cautious. At first, Graca Machel resisted falling in love with Nelson Mandela since she had vowed never to remarry after Graca Machel's death. She later recalled, "When we met, I thought I wouldn't allow anyone else to come into my life in a private way. I thought he would be a good friend, but he convinced me otherwise." In the meantime, they spent time together, communicated often, but the transition from comrades, friends, confidants to lovers was slow. As Graca Machel put it, "At first, we enjoyed sharing and having someone to talk to who understood. He would call me often, but our relationship quickly developed into something much deeper. Soon, this was no longer a friendship. We had broken through each other's defenses." She also had this to say: "It wasn't love at first sight. For me, things doesn't happen like that. For me, falling in love is like a spark connecting two people. With Samora, I was with him for some time and only later did I feel the spark. It was the same with Nelson." On July 18, 1998, during his 88th birthday, they bought a house together and got married. Graca was 52 years old at the time. Mandela also later expressed how her presence transformed him. In one public comment, he wrote, "I cannot describe my joy and happiness to receive the love and warmth of such a humble but gracious and brilliant lady. It gives me unbelievable comfort and satisfaction to know that there is somebody somewhere in the universe on whom I can rely, especially on matters where my political comrades cannot provide me." Again, in a TV interview, Mandela said, "I am in love with a remarkable lady. I don't regret the reverses and setbacks because late in my life I am blooming like a flower because of the love and support she has given me." But even before their official marriage, rumors of their love affair were already making the rounds as their relationship became increasingly visible in the mid-1990s. Hand-holding appearances and affectionate gestures foiled the rumors. In the media, Graca was sometimes criticized both in Mozambique and South Africa for being seen as a woman who might be replacing Winnie or for stepping into the immense shadow cast by Nelson Mandela. She also had to balance her commitments. In Mozambique, she remained deeply involved in education, children's rights, and humanitarian projects. In South Africa, she became more present with Mandela during state and ceremonial duties. In 2008, she told an interviewer, "He is simply a wonderful husband. We met in life at a time we were both settled. We were grown up, we were settled. We knew the value of a companion, of a partner. Because of that, it has been wonderful to have him as a husband." On July 18, 1998, on Nelson Mandela's 88th birthday, they were married. The ceremony was both personal and public, with many dignitaries and international guests gracing the occasion. Graca Machel became the First Lady of South Africa 12 years after she became the widowed First Lady of Mozambique. She holds a unique status in history. She became the only woman in modern history to have been First Lady of two different African countries. Reflecting on her life, she has often compared her two marriages and said, "If someone believes in destiny, it is the destiny of my life that I was loved and I loved two extraordinary human beings. It is different experiences." Meanwhile, when Nelson Mandela's health deteriorated, especially in the years after his presidency, Graca Machel was almost always by his side, supporting, protecting, mediating between his family and the public and the media. When Nelson Mandela died on the 5th of December 2013, Graca spoke publicly of her loss with both grief and dignity. In her first interview afterward, she said, "Very few people living in the world would have been showered with so much love like Madiba. We experienced both outpouring of solidarity and love and support. It was really very comforting," she concluded. The story of Graca Machel is that of an extraordinary woman who became the First Lady of two African countries. For more interesting stories, click here. For the story of why Nelson Mandela could not forgive Winnie Mandela, click on the video displayed here. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.